Now, before we jump into the episode, I want to be able to take a moment to shout out one of our newest sponsors here at the Dirt Drop. We jumped on board with Velocity USA out of North Carolina for all things safety equipment. They've got helmets, they've got race suits, they've got gloves, shirts, shoes, youth motorsport apparel, as well as custom tees and shirts for you to be able to have for your team and crew members. Now, just because they're taking care of us, we want to be able to take care of you. That's right, guys. Make sure to use code TDD10 at checkout for 10% off all Velocita branded apparel on their website, which you can see back there. That's right, guys. That code again is TDD10, the Dirt Drop 10, for 10% off all Velocita branded apparel on their website. Now, let's get to the show.
Everybody quiet!
Welcome to another episode of the Dirt Drop Podcast. I am your host, Chris DeBoard, and today I am joined by the one and only Mr. Kiely Mackey. Say hi to everybody.
Oldest name in drifting. Howdy, everybody.
Oh my goodness. Kiely was nice enough to take some time out of his schedule to talk about all things Grassroots and everything drifting. Kiely, again, thank you guys so much for being here. So, Kiely Mackey, can we just get like an elevator pitch of who you are in the drifting world? I'm curious if you could be able to sum this all up pretty quickly.
Oh, man. So, been at it forever. I have always had vehicles or gone to events that got me like a little bit of notoriety. Never crossed over and been like a big deal or anything. Was competing up until, I don't know, the 2012-ish, and then decided a man can't afford that the way I live. And I've just had fun with it since. Either just building cars and not really drifting a lot for a while, or finding my spot drifting again and hanging out with friends and just having a good time.
Well, now you say you've been drifting for the longest. I know we were talking about this off camera a little bit, and at another event, you and I sat down and we did some math, and it was a little painful. How long have you been drifting on tracks?
On tracks, 22 years.
So your drifting experience is legally allowed to drink, vote, smoke, and
grown-ass drifting experience.
Almost be able to get good car insurance here in America.
There you go.
Oh, my goodness. So what got you started? 22 years is probably the longest time the majority of my friends can be associated with drifting. What got you involved in what is known as drifting?
So the starts before I had a clue what the word drifting meant. My father, and then later I, were wholesale buyers for used car companies. So that affords you, cars people didn't want at the dealership, or cars were thrown into package deals, and you get, we call them dollar cars. And that could be an old Ford Ranger, or it could be a Buick Roadmaster before they were front-wheel drive. It could be anything like that. So if my dad got something for free and it didn't seem like it would sell in the yard, or maybe it had a title issue or whatever, it would come home to me. I'd pay for what we call the ride, the shipping to get it down here, which was only a couple $100 back then. And my friends and I would go out on dirt roads and have ourselves a great time late at night. I had access to dealer tags legally, and that's what we do. People are from near Lancaster, South Carolina. They'll know Waxhaw Village Dirt Road. It's like an 8-mile long dirt road that's curves from one end to the other. And we go out, we play on that, and eventually that turned into like modifying vehicles to do it better, maybe pretend like we were rally drivers. At one point we had an 81 Corolla, the ones that look like a Datsun 510.
Yes.
Good looking little cars.
Yes.
I think the engine's called a TC. Yeah, somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong on that one.
Before the 4AC, it was the 3TC.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we found an intake manifold to put a Weber on the thing, and a buddy built a header, and we built a roll cage, and we built ourselves a rally car. Had a great time. Okay. And then, if you're going on a date with some girl and you're in your teens, I'm sure they loved going out in an old Buick and dirt road whatevering with your friends. Anyway, we had a good time. Maybe some of those ladies didn't. So that turned into, I was known as a little bit of a show off when I had a car that would do stuff. Starions and some Supras before anybody knew a Supra was anything special.
Was it Mark III or Mark IV?
Ooh. So I
were they
mostly
Mark
Mark
II
III.
Celica Supras?
There was one of the, oh God, there's been one of everything. There was a Mark, there was a Celica Supra. It was my aunt's and got passed down to me. It was called Gigi. There was a Mark III that I drove in high school for a little while. And then right at the end of my high school life, it's crazy how you didn't know what a Mark IV Supra was going to become. Both my mother and myself had Mark IV Supras for a little while. I think we might have had them at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
So mine was green, mom's was red. Mom's was manual and mine was automatic. But at the time they were $7,000 cars. And that was kind of a lot of money for a driver for me, but at the same time, it was going to make money when we sold it and we weren't worried about it. Anyway, so at some point, I'd say around 2002 2002, I had bumped into a 240 SX and I hadn't modified it or anything, except maybe I pulled some interior out of it. I don't know. I think it smelled really bad of cigarettes, so I pulled the interior out.
Are you talking about an S13 or S14?
Yeah, S13, single cam, hatchback, gray.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I think it had a bad clutch when I bought it, and we figured out some other clutch worked. I don't remember the whole story, but anyway.
Yep.
So I had a friend named Brad Hicks, and he was like the first one of us to grow up and get a house. And he bought a house that was in the corner of where three roads came together, and it was the party spot. So even though I didn't really party that much, I would show up to the party spot. It's the middle of nowhere. I'm not hitting anyone. The worst I could have done was went in his yard and hit a drunk person. I would show up to his house, what we'd call Arab drifting. I would start mangying before I was anywhere near there. I just stop in the middle of the road, run it up to, 50 miles an hour, and then swing it and start mangying, and then intentionally spin out really aggressively until it either did one or two rounds and then try and come out of it going the right direction in front of his house. And one of the times that I did that, he and a couple other guys started yelling, about how I was drifting. No idea what he was talking about. As of 2002, the word meant nothing to me. And they kept going on about it, and they were really jazzed about it. And he took me inside, all of them drunk as they could possibly be, and showed me this DVD. And I really wish I could remember the name of the DVD. A buddy of mine actually found it the other day. I should have had this information ready. And the DVD had this guy that was a street drifter named Drifter X. It was all Japan. It was like a video magazine of drifting.
You probably got a video option DVD.
So I think it might have been optioned. So they did a feature on this guy, Drifter X. It was an orange hatch, signal stripe. I'm going to say Vienna Courage's, real low, a lot of camera in the back. Thing was sweet. And the dub
had a nice wing on the back, on the hatch, like a solid wing.
The dub was terrible. There was this girl who was interviewing them, and the English dub of it was very flippant. They didn't care. They're, oh, yeah, I've got this, but I don't care about that. And we did this, and I wrecked 14 times, but everything's fine. And whoever was dubbing this understood the assignment.
Oh, my God.
And they did. I didn't even know what a JZX 100 was back then, but they were excited about it because it was like nearly a new car. And this nearly homeless looking older guy had it. And I didn't know what it was, but I was pumped on that. Watching this video with my friends. Life-changing day there.
Yes.
I watched that video with them probably 3 times that weekend. And my takeaway was, I want to be these people. I want to do this thing.
Oh, pretty up point.
I want to do it all the time. I'm already doing some of this stuff. I want to do way more and do it better. So that led to becoming more active on the internet.
Yes.
And I found an importer in Greenville, which for me is like an hour and a half away. And the place was named something terrible like Rims and Things. Because he had been an eBay wheel dealer. And then he got into importing stuff. So I went down.
And well, hold on a second. What year are we at now? Just so I can kind of
We're
frame
like
for the viewers.
End of 02. End of 02. We're pushing 03.
Okay. Now I need to put a disclaimer here because I know a lot of things about how you import cars and how I import cars. So for things to be federally legal, traditionally, they need to be 25 years older to the model, month, and year to be legally imported under NHTSA laws,
Right.
to be exempt from inspections, emissions, and then be able to be given a title.
Yes.
Now that I put the disclaimer out there, Kiely, please proceed.
So that doesn't happen quite yet, but this gentleman does end up being my importer. So we went down there. Initially, I went to the sales and I bought a 240SX coupe that had 115,000 miles. It was bright red wind-up windows, no moonroof.
Okay.
It was the one. Being
good
bright red
top,
was maybe a little better than being the burgundy that so many of them were. I bought it with a little bit of a rod knot. Knowing it was going to get engine swapped, we almost burned the car to the ground because I'd never blown up an engine on purpose at that point. So we drained the oil and went for a drive. And it got to where it was slinging rods. And as it would sling one rod, it would almost cut off. It would almost kill it. And then it would sling that rod. And the thing would pick back up and go to running a little better. Unfortunately, when it slung one of the rods, it wiped out the side of the oil pan on the exhaust side.
Oof.
And it set itself on fire about a quarter of a mile from my friend's house. And it was a race to continue driving it and get it home while on fire. A fire moving under the car pretty badly. But we got it to my buddy's house. We put the fire out. Ended up barely even hurting the paint or anything. So back to this. There's the car that's going to get the engine. I had heard SR20. So we go down to Rims and Things, meet Brad Fanning, the owner of Rims and Things. We pick up our SR entire swap with some extra parts for the paltry sum of $1,200.
I'm leaving.
S13 our swap under $1,500 with extras.
Whoa.
So I take it home. I got my first Zilvia username. And it was Swap in the Dark. Is till this day. I didn't know what I was doing. I was doing a swap in the dark. Looked up a bunch of info, pretty quickly figured out how to wire an SR swap. We got this thing together in 2 weekends and fired it up. And it fired up, sounded great. None of us knew anything about the SR oil pan dent. Yeah. After about
oil starvation.
After about 10 minutes of running, it started valve tap, like a little bit of valve tap. We're not cutting it off. We're trying to figure out why it's starting to valve tap. And then we did cut it off. We checked oil. There was plenty of oil. We started it back up. When we started it back up, she was a knocking. I went back to Brad and I said, because this is a long story, but it's important to how things went in the future. I called Brad up. I take that back. Called him up and said, "Hey man, this engine has a knock." And he goes, "Well, you have a warranty, but it's going to be like a month and a half before I get any more SRs. I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, "But if you come down here," he's like, "you know what a Skyline is, right?" And I'm like, "I've heard that name before." He's like, "I've got Skyline engines." And I was like, "Okay. Are they turbo? And does it fit in a Nissan?" He's like, "Yes to both. The wiring might be a little tough." I go down there. He gives me an entire front clip to an R32 Skyline. Like
GTST or GTO?
Oh, no, GTST.
Okay.
RB20.
I can only take so much in one story.
We will get to some of that eventually, though.
I remember that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we go get this thing, and to make up the difference, because at that time, his price on a complete RB20 swap was $850. $850.
Running, driving, intake to oil pan,
mass airflow included, all of it. And it was like $950 or $1,000 for a front clip. Now, the front clip wouldn't have no guaranteed good body panels. Like you probably get
Right.
They'd sit them on top of one another and things like that. But it gave you some neat stuff. You could side mount intercooler and all that if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So I take the swap back home. He actually gave me some other stuff with it, a set of coilovers and things like that, which I'd never had coilovers. We were like, these things are too stiff to do anything. This isn't even suspension. So with coilovers and some other parts and RB20 in hand, we went back home. And I really got to digging on the internet to figure out how to do this swap. No clue about all the little details to doing that swap. And while it can all bolt together, and I did have the cross member that makes it bolt together, we weren't sure of that. If you don't know that, you can really go back and forth for weeks, which we did. I think at one point we fired it up with the entire 32 body harness up to the middle of the front seats in my car,
just to get it running,
because we didn't know. There wasn't an FAQ or FSM on how to wire an RB20 at the time. Turns out it's a couple of wires on a square plug in the corner of the engine bay. Who'd have thought? Later ones ended up being, OEM, just whatever. Let's get this thing going, and you couldn't have told us this thing didn't have 350 wheel horsepower. Hindsight, probably didn't have 200 wheel horsepower. But
I mean, it was a 2-liter straight 6 turbo versus, like you said, your single jingle.
Yeah. we were on to something. And I really liked the power band of the motor. It pulled for a long time. It revved really high. Well, 82 or something for an RB20.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. The sound was just crazy back then. Again, just imagine it in late 02, 03. What the heck?
Unheard of.
Yeah. So this car ended up, like I said, it got the coilovers, it got some other stuff. This car was fun for a while. It got sold to my best friend at the time, Brandon Fail, and I built another one. I wanted to do it a little better, and that ended up being, I still had the gray hatch. So I still had the gray hatch, and we put an RB20 in it, and this time the wiring was nice, and we had power steering, and we understood that VLSDs suck, or we figured that out to our, as best we could, and it got welded. I think I weaseled him out of those coilovers, because again, we looked up what coilovers cost, and we're like, we can't afford that. I'm going to need those coilovers back, man. Because after that car ran for a little while, I figured out coilovers were kind of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So my buddy got the red car. It had been fun. I took the hatch, made it a little nicer swap, and then decided I wanted it to look like the drift cars in Pan.
Okay.
So we had always gotten we used to be Nopi car show people. It was a real thing. I was mostly mini truck folks. I went to the stereo shop that we would order body kits through. I was like, well, what you got for a 240? And there was some awful stuff. There was some Arabuni looking stuff. There was a
Bomex.
Yeah, Bomex, which wasn't horrible, but it was only in the edge of what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. I think the worst one I saw was there was a Veilside rep. The catfish nose, that whole thing. But there was one that had a name like G-Force, and it was a G Corp. It was a G Corp rep.
Okay.
Just nice, boxy, simple, Japan drift kit. And I ended up waiting something like a month on that thing. Okay. Did some body work on the car, made the car look, the body look okay. Rolled and pulled fenders. Figured out how to home drill a 5-lug conversion. I think we swapped the rear and then home drilled the front. I think that's what ended up happening.
You had options for the rear at that point to be able to get
right.
hub.
But on a 13, you didn't have any options in the front yet unless you just swapped a 14 stuff.
Correct.
Not in the budget. Ended up getting this body kit on this thing. I ended up putting Starion wheels on it.
Okay.
Good offset, little roll and pull. Yep. Back then, 16s were cheap, but seemed like a real size to me.
Yeah, I mean, 17s were really aggressive wheels.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So 16s I can see.
So painted the car, weird choice of colors. I ended up painting it olive drab, but glossy. We painted a lot of cars back in the car showy whatever days.
Mm-hmm.
Glossy olive drab on a hatch. And then, weirdly enough, at about the same time, I don't remember the magazine, if D Sport existed yet or what. It might have just been Sport Compact or something. Car ended up in one of those magazines with an RB. I think it had like black SSRs with a polished lip, which I had done. It was the real version to my Temu version, but I didn't copy him. It happened at the same time. And so I started drifting this thing around town, and I was pretty pumped on it. And then my life situation changed, and I ended up having to come to Maryland to take care of what had been my father's job. And within a few weeks, of course, I'd found where everyone went and hung out and did car stuff. And after a little while, I needed to carry cars back anyway, because it gains me money to drive a car back if I have a way back to Maryland. So I drove a car home, and I got in this SX that was swapped and welded, and I drove it to Maryland.
Okay.
500 miles, swapped 240. Didn't bat an eye. Now it matters. Then I was just like, it's something I'm doing this week.
Circa, 2006 probably?
2003.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
My God.
So drive this car to Maryland, go to the hangout spot. I'm really trying hard to remember the name of this road that people would go to, but it was a divided 4-lane, and people would pull out from this place and do impromptu drag races one direction, and turn around and come back. And there was a parking lot, and everybody could see you leave to go do your drag race.
So that part still exists. We're not going to name that location.
Yeah, we won't name that location.
It's definitely in Mexico, Baltimore area.
Exactly.
There's no doubt about that.
Southern Baltimore, Mexico.
Yeah.
I showed up at that place, and I did try and race somebody in some 6-speed Maxima or something like that. For the 2 stacks, you got to know what you got. Once on my feet with the hat to the back. Find me on the block with the flow, with the crack, for the money I'm up. Spit the game and don't quit. Some of y'all hoes ain't never seen bricks. Some of y'all but then when I turned around at the end, of course, I did some mangy stuff up the street. And when I pulled back in, folks were pumped. They were very, very excited. And I met 2 people that became really long-term friends. I'm not super close to them right now, but we still talk every now and again. Brian and Kevin Sweeney.
Oh, okay.
They were so excited at that time that, we just started talking and became pals. And they ended up being a big part of my life for a long time. Neither one of them ended up drifting. They were into other stuff. One was into Volkswagens, and one was into whatever was import and fast. So I got to where I would get in some trouble here in Maryland with that car. And I think it was Brian. I don't know if it was Brian or Kevin. One of them was like, man, it would be nice if we could drift at this one place. And he named it. And I guess we're not going to name places. We'll be careful with that.
Is it the old Baltimore? Yeah. Okay. Yep.
It's by a body of water.
Yeah.
And
if you go there now, you will 100% get arrested.
You cannot.
Don't go there anymore.
Absolutely cannot. You can go there and look at it and enjoy the scenery. It's beautiful there. Yeah. But you'll get in a lot of trouble if you try. There's a police station there, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, they introduced me to the place, and we drove around and why are there no police here? And they explained how the place was set up and why it was policed by the city, even though it was in the county. Mm-hmm. And they really just didn't want to come out there, and they'd come out once or twice a day. So I started drifting there. And it got to a point where I met a couple of other people. I met Armin. I met the guy who we call Asian Dan Sao.
Yes. Frank Pandolfini is probably in that crew, isn't he?
Frank was later, but he absolutely was. And he was there while you could still go to that place. Kind of toward the tail end of when you could.
They'll be coming by here just any moment now. I can feel it in my bones. I just can't wait to get...
So I meet those guys there from getting ready to go there. And it was so good. I hate saying that something street drifting related kind of taught me how to drift, but it really did. The place was so good that we would bring tires, put them behind trash cans, and drift for hours on end. Someone would wreck, go over a curb, whatever, the cops would stop by and say, hey, if you can't get that out of here in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to have to do my job.
Okay.
So it was as close to legal drifting. It was unfair. It was really unfair. It was like getting lots of track time. So that was a green car at first. And then I decided again that like, it was never like the car I had's not that good. It was just, I think I'd passed by Mid-Atlantic Motorsports.
Oh, crazy.
At that time on, we're saying that's Harvard. Yeah, it was on Harvard Road in what had been a Napa. Which for me, maybe I'm just a little bit jaded because that was the first place I saw them. It was my favorite location. Even though I work in a much bigger, much better, obviously the place has to be there location. Yeah. When MA was on Harford Road in that Napa, it had that glass front with the Napa counter, and it had all the banners from drift events and Japanese banners. And Matt Martin's star car, before it had stars on it, sat in the front where it would have been, the racks of the Universal parts. It sat right in that, like just a showcase. And
we can kind of visualize this real quick. So essentially, for those of you who were a fan of the first Fast and the Furious movie, when he pulls into Racer's Edge, Paul Walker,
but like
that
a
was
little
essentially,
scummy,
Yeah, in Baltimore, but like the Wish version, but 100% it had the bay, everything.
And then the cars were unbelievably good. So you had Matt's car, amazing. The forged lines and like GN pluses stacked up behind it because that was his spare wheels.
Oh my God.
And there's a guy named Colin, local to here, that at one point used to drift a Camry, but anyway. He had a hatch that was on chrome 18 by 9.5s all the way around. The car was so low, the front fenders were cut.
Wait a minute, are we talking about Colin Bailey?
Is that Colin? I don't know. It's Colin. Wait. What is Colin's last name? Are you referring to Colin that used to have the yellow 350Z?
Yeah.
No. I
was about to say, he would have been like 4 at this time.
He was definitely in grade school for sure.
Yeah.
No, this guy, they call him Sweaty Pants. Sweatpants. Colin Sweatpants. He always wore sweatpants. His name on the forums was Sweaty Pants. So you had Colin's hatch with a real body kit, stupid low on chrome 18s, roll and pull. Why did I say stupid? It was like rim lip to quarter panel.
Gorgeous.
Undrivable, but still drivable. Woody, who was a good friend of Brian's, had maybe the most put together, and I think it was only really nice for a little while. A coupe, bright red coupe, good body kit, 5 Zygon FN01 RCs, the hot versions in the rear. Just had a tough, meaty look to it, had over fenders. That was like me first seeing over fenders. All these cars are sitting around. Alistair's black RX-7 on, what are they? Close to my favorite wheel. Black Regas.
Okay.
You got black FC on black Regas, no body kit, just low S5 tails. It was a rotary car. And they're doing RB swaps and Z's and things like that. I saw the place. I didn't really talk to them, but it all made it feel like this is where you want to be. And I was ready to build a better car. I'd seen their stuff, and I wanted a better car. So I built another RB20.
Another one.
Third car in 2.5 years.
RBS chassis.
RB20s.
Oh my gosh.
To the point that the guy, oh man, we were rolling everywhere. To the point that the guy I was buying these engines from asked me, because I'm swapping my friends' cars. I mean, we've probably done 6 or 7 of them at this point. And we never want SRs. We always want RB20s, occasionally RB25s. I think we did a 25 in Brad Hicks's car. The guy that kind of all started it for me. He ended up with a silver blue hatch. By this time, 350Zs had just come out, so 350Z wheel was like the newest thing you could have.
Ooh.
So 350Z wheel. Yeah, and he was like the OEM plus guy, So yeah, that's like that silver blue RB25 Z wheels, just lowering springs. Nice car. So doing all these swaps, that's another thing that comes up. the Brad Fanning guy asks me at some point, he's like, "Are you blowing these up? Because I'll give a warranty." I'm like, "No, man, I'm swapping them." And he said something like, how did he word this? He didn't give me a discount. He asked me, he's like, "Well, I'll give you a discount," or he's like, "Every fifth swap you buy, I'll give you a swap. It might have a cut harness or something like that, but I'll give you one." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm into that."
Oh my gosh.
So I think I did that. I did enough swaps with friends that I think I got 2 free ones from him over time. And one of those went to a buddy, and one of those ended up being a giant problem in my life. But I don't even think that we could go in here. Okay. So we did it again. I found a coupe that was in really good shape body-wise. It had been sitting at a storage place, and the person hadn't paid their storage bill in 10 or 12 years. People that are from around here will know it was next to Jerry's Toyota. It's a storage place next to Jerry's Toyota on Bel Air Road. And I'd see the car when I would buy wholesale cars at Jerry's. So you could see the place. You could see where the car was sitting from where you'd buy wholesale cars. And finally, I went over one day and asked about it. And the guy said, "Yeah, I mean, there won't be a title or anything, but I'll give you a bill of sale. That person's been delinquent for over 10 years. I'm like, okay. So he goes, "I'll sell you that car for $250. No title. But you have to take these 2 Carmen Gias that are in the corner of the lot, and they have to leave. I don't ever want to see them again. They got to go." So,
It's time for the all-new Let's Make a Deal, starring TV's big dealer, Monty Hall.
so I called
Oh
up,
my God.
I called up my buddy Tony Grimmel, who used to videotape us doing stuff, and he used to make Torque Video Magazine, which was like
Mm-hmm.
I love Tony, but he was like he wasn't doing the same stuff, but he was trying to be like Mischief.
Yeah.
Mischief TV.
Yeah, I remember Torque, yeah.
Yeah, and it was to the point that they kind of had a bit of a rivalry, which meant I couldn't be friends with Mischief people for a long time. We're fine now.
Those are my homies, so I gotta Dustin, Daniel, all those. Yeah. I gotta.
But like Tony would like. I don't know if it was Tony or them. They both were probably doing it. It's probably good for both brands to have a little bit of a rivalry. So yeah, Dustin and stuff. I couldn't be their homie for years because of that. Anyway, called up Tony, told him $250 to these 2 Volkswagens if you want them. Got a free 240. And he was, I think I told him what was going on. He was happy to do that.
Oh my gosh.
This car was really, really nice, except for the paint on the roof and the hood. And it had a trunk rack. So I had to go to the junkyard, and I got a black trunk.
Oh my God.
And if anyone remembers me from back then, which nobody probably does, but if they do remember me, the car was kind of distinctive because of the black trunk on the gold coupe.
My God.
So I get this car, I RB20 swap it, I 5-lug swap it. I bought my first set of brand new real coilovers, KTS K Sport. They were real to me.
That was middle of the road. That was actually not a terrible
at the time, right?
Yeah.
And I think I don't remember what arms I bought, but I bought real arms and stuff.
Right.
Probably I didn't buy them from MA. I hadn't bought anything from MA yet. I think I just bought them on eBay or something. No, I bought them from Njuku. Anyway.
Well, it's fuckas, ruckas, luckas. Like, I mean, just super simple tubular arms. Yeah.
No angle mods. And for some reason, I messed up the power steering. This car didn't have power steering at the time. And I bought new 5 Zygon FN01 RCs from seeing Woody's car. I had to have them in 9 front and 9.5 rear. So, or is it 9 and 10 or something? So they're 17 by whatever. So the rear were the hot versions, the deep ones.
Okay.
Bronze on a champagne car or gold car with that black trunk. I thought it looked terrible at the time. Looking back at it, that car looked good. It kind of looked good. Anywho, was enjoying this car, enjoying the friends. I don't believe I'd actually met Armin and Dan just yet. I met them while I had that car.
Okay.
So I'm dating this girl who's pretty into the internet, and she looked up. She was like, "Why don't you go to a race?" I'm like, "Well, it's not racing, and there's nowhere around here, and it's not a thing." And she's like, well, there's this place called Old Bridge Township Raceway. And she's looking it up. And I don't know if any of you people have ever been on the Englishtown website. But you used to go on it, and it was this annoying little Noid voice that would laugh and then say, Raceway Park. It was awful. It's the worst thing. I heard that the first time that night. And for looking up event stuff, I've probably heard it 10,000 times since.
Yeah, probably.
She gave me a date and a time, and she looked up how much it cost to enter. And I think the entry fee was $50 or $60.
Ooh.
Yeah. And there was no road course. This was in the parking lot that they call the kart track area now, but the further outside, closer to the entrance.
Yeah.
So she and I loaded up and headed for this. No idea what to expect. I didn't know what a drift event looked like. Not a clue. I also didn't know what a toll was. I'd never been north of Baltimore. There were no tolls between South Carolina and Baltimore.
Oh, my goodness. And so there were all the tolls in between Baltimore and Raceway Park.
Yes. I think it was, $50 on the way up. And I assumed there's going to be 50 on the way back. It was actually cheaper on the way back. And we had gas money, food money, entry fee. That's it. If things go wrong, plan, because why would you have one of those? So by the time I get there, I still had just enough money to do this event. Okay. We go to pay, and they're like, it's $120. What? I say 120. It might have not been 120. It was something near double what I expected.
Okay.
And I was like, I told the person at the little table, I don't have that. And they're like, you show up, you don't have the money. I'm like, well, I was under the impression it was $60 or whatever. They're like, oh no, today's a comp. It's like, it's more when it's a comp. I'm like, well, I don't want to do it.
Okay.
Well, they're like, well, you can't afford it anyway. So, and they were like, well, hold on, let's talk to Matt. So they call over this person who turned out to be Matt Petty. At the time.
Oh, okay. Now we're talking about, I was about to say.
Yeah.
I'm hearing green car and I haven't heard this name yet.
Yeah. So this guy, Matt, long hair, black rim, thick glasses, skinny as a rail. So skinny. Comes over, worst attitude ever. I didn't know it was a good thing yet. He's like, what? You don't have any money? What? Why'd you show up? We don't have any money. I explained it. He's like, why didn't you check? I was like, man, it's a long way, and it's a this and that and other. I'm just heard drift event and a price, and I showed up. He's like, all right, let me see what I can do about this. And he goes over somewhere and grabs this bullhorn, which he ends up using a lot. And he addresses everyone in the paddock. And of course, he calls them names and stuff. And says, hey, we've got a guy that drove all the way from South Carolina. Not true. Guy drove all the way from South Carolina to drift here today. He didn't have enough money to do the comp. So we're going to let him drive if you guys aren't scared, or something along those lines. Something like that. It's like, he's never drifted an event before. Are you scared that's going to be a problem? And everybody's like, yeah, cool, whatever. Let him drift. They didn't care.
Yeah.
Like 3 people made a noise. No one cared. So I got to drift. And about halfway through the day, that Matt Petty guy hopped in the car with me. And he was and I was like, well, am I doing anything wrong? He was like, just go do a lap. I was like, okay. I got done doing the lap, and he's like, you're on the wrong side of the cones on this one spot. I'm like, what? He's like, you're not supposed to be on the outside of these cones. You're going toward the fence. So you're supposed to be on the inside. He's like, you made the track work, though, but you're supposed to be on the inside. I'm like, well, how am I going to go fast enough to get in third if I'm on the inside? And he's like, just drive the track right. And so I drive for a little while, and he comes to the pits, and he asks me some questions about the car. And he's like, well, what size tires are you running? And I told him 225 in the front and 245 in the rear. And he's like, that's way too big. What? And then he was like, why are you, you're kind of fighting the wheel. Why are you fighting the wheel so much? Just let it'll drive itself. I was like, well, I don't have any power steering. What? And then he asked me about my diff. He's like, you got an LSD, right? And I'm like, no, I got a weld. And he's like, oh, that's crap. You got to get this or that or another. I don't remember what he said. And I'm like, what? So he gave me some pointers and sent me on my way, and I kept driving. End of the day comes, and they start doing some kind of award ceremony, and I end up winning this thing.
No, you shut up.
I have why do I not have the trophy with me right now? I have the trophy at home, or I have a piece of the trophy at home that still says what it was.
Oh my gosh.
Englishtown Drift Champion 2004. But there was a little bit of him and hawing from some folks. And he got on the bullhorn and really gave them a bunch of crap and said, all right, then, he doesn't get the money, but I'm still giving him the trophy.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I didn't know there was money, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. So I have that trophy to this day. It's left me for a little while and came back. That's another whole story. So I didn't get any money. And then while I'm packing up, my girlfriend's helping me pack up, Petty comes over. And he goes, I used to think it was $500. It might have only been $250. It was some amount of money. He comes over and he goes, you said you came from Baltimore today. I'm like, yeah. He goes, you ever heard of Mid-Atlantic Motorsport? And I was like, actually, I have. Not long ago. I learned about it, less than a year ago. And it's sick. I've never been in there. He goes, oh, so you don't know Brian or Ray? I'm like, no. He goes, well, you've got either $250 or $500 credit there. No.
Okay.
He goes, well, I couldn't give you the money. He's like, but maybe someone owed him money there or something. I don't know. He goes, you've got a credit there. Sweet. I go home. I ran some tolls. Didn't have enough to get home.
As you do.
I come cruising into MA a few days later, and I bump into Brian. I think I actually bumped into Ray first, and then he passed me off to Brian. And I said the situation, and Brian was very like, ugh, yeah, okay. He was like, I don't know what I got that you could, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know what I want. And somehow we settled on, well, don't you need tires changed? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, we'll start knocking the bill down with tire changes. Okay. That went on for a little while where I'd come in and you'd see Ray like roll his eyes. So nobody wants to just change tires for free, And I think there was some attempt to keep track of it at first. That went out the window. And eventually one day I come tripping into my flip-flops with some used tires in my wheels. And Ray's like, do you know how to use a tire machine? Yeah. He goes, just do them. And a lot of people have already heard this story, but I'm still changing tires on that same tire machine at no charge today.
I think that's a perfect segue to move into my next question, because you definitely established regardless of it long form or short form, everyone has a different journey of what it takes to be the person they are today versus where they came from. A lot of the stuff can't be replicated that you were able to take part in, unfortunately, just because of timing, money.
Very, very lucky time to have been involved.
Right.
Maybe if I was involved 1 year earlier, things would be even better, but we'll see.
Hindsight's always 20/20, Kiely.
I'm just saying, Vaughn and Forsberg and everybody.
So you, following all that, you've, affiliated with MA Motorsports now for over 2 decades, that would put it.
Yes.
Brian Wilkerson and crew, some great guys over there, MA Motorsports. You've had some really eclectic chassis over the years.
Yes.
I've only known you for the better part. 11? I bought an LS400 off of you. That's how we met. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yes.
That was a whole story in itself.
Because we blew up the car it was replacing on the way home.
Yeah, a Mercedes diesel somehow. We
managed to blow up a Mercedes diesel, yes.
But anyways, here nor there, some eclectic chassis. I know you've probably had 24 that I've been able to try to place on.
Yes.
I need your top 3. Yep. No. We need you. I need you to talk about your favorite children. And you need to have favorite children. I need your top 3 favorite drift cars that you have personally owned and driven in your drifting career.
Okay. My current drift car is maybe number 1. Maybe number 1.
Thank you. We're gonna get to her, but
okay.
Yeah.
Current car might be number 1. All right. I tell you what, we're gonna leave that one out. Top 3. I have to go with the black R32 that started RB20.
Yes.
Started RB20, automatic. Had been sitting in a garage with a whole lot of dog pee for a really long time. I manual swapped it, was doing the RB20 thing for a while. Eventually, Ben Freed, while working at MA, offered me a really nice deal on a VBTI 1J and R154. I think I gave $1,700 for that thing.
Again,
different times.
Unreplaceable.
So Black R32, 1J VBTI, or 4 B in Sports body kit. I would oscillate between B and Sports, and what was the other thing? Urus body kit, the old squared off guy. We used to have a place 20 miles from us that was, what was the name of it? Chaser Aero.
Yes!
It was in Joppa, Maryland, and you would walk in. I think the gentleman's name was Red, and he would just be like, you know where it's at. Go out. There were 2 big warehouses behind there was one warehouse where the business part was at, and there were 2 more warehouses he rented.
Right.
And he was actually more interested in selling Honda parts, Honda body kits, but he had to take all these other chassis of kits to get what he wanted. So for years, that place we didn't know what that stuff was. They had JZX90 and 100 body kits and BR conversion and whatever. So anywho, where did I go off on that?
Well, Chaser, fun fact, you mentioned Chaser. I had a knockoff BN Sports blister rep for my FD.
Yeah.
I got from Chaser.
There was a lot of BN Sports blisters. Armin had a BN Sports blister rep on his 13 for a while from there.
And then what was it? 2 years later, I tried to go get another thing. I'm like, oh, we don't exist anymore.
No, they didn't. So he sort of does. Guess what? More stories.
Yeah.
Okay. Where was I even at? Oh, so yeah, that's why I kept swapping around between body kits, because it was $400 for a whole kit, and you go 20 miles away and pick it up.
It's wild.
It was great. That car had a really nice set of over fenders that were like plastic. They weren't even fiberglass. They were just black plastic, one layer.
Okay.
Like not Tupperware, but still very, just push it in and it pops right back out. And that set of over fenders mounted inside the door and inside the trunk lid because it was so thin. You couldn't tell they were over fenders. It was insane. I've never.
That was almost like that 4 I sold you with that wide body kit. Or, I'm sorry, the R32 sedan I sold you that was all wonky.
Yes.
Very similar to that.
Yes. So I love that set of over fenders, and luckily I never killed them, and they got sold with the car. So that car, whether be it JZ or later on, that car got an LS, my first LS swap.
Yes, it did.
The idea behind that was, while I had that black R32, I got my FD license. I'm doing SWD Pro-Am all up and down the East Coast. I got my FD license. I guess that was 09, I think.
Wow,
in that black car.
Been that long?
With a VBTI 1J that was pretty much bone stock.
Gosh.
And once I got my FD license, I thought, well, I have to have horsepower and things like that. So I LS swapped the car, and I enjoyed it, but I don't know that I enjoyed it as much as I did when it was VBTI 1J. I would drive it to North Carolina. I would drive it to Florida and compete with the VBTI.
Gosh.
I think that's my favorite. That's my favorite car, followed by the blue S15 D-Max
I got
wide
a feature
body.
in a magazine, which PAS.
Yes, I think it was Pass Mag. Yeah, it was Pass Mag.
Yeah.
So it was. What was the front? Sea West front. Factory brilliant blue car. D-Max sides and rear. D-Max overs. VBTI 2J. CD00. I think it was 350Z diff and stuff. Bone stock interior other than a seat. Car was really nice to be in. It was pretty quiet.
It was like a 500 wheel horsepower car, though, right?
Yeah, it made. I think it made 620, and then we backed off.
Yeah, so. Just a street car. Just a street car.
And on a 245/40, it just any time, anywhere you wanted to, 60 miles an hour on the highway, you could put it back in fourth, and just go to limiter, and the car really wouldn't even speed up. It would just kind of continue at that speed. It would eventually catch up.
Or what's that? Ocean City Boulevard or whatever the I may have seen that. Different owner though, right? Different owner.
No, sure. No, I don't. it's long ago enough. Everything's fine. But no, one of my favorite not drifting videos, a guy named Zach Maskell, I believe, took the video, or maybe it was AJ. Everybody's telling you to do burnouts on coastal as they do. Mm-hmm. And the car had a Borg Warner S366. So it was a little laggy. It lit off about 4,700 normally. So people were being goaded to do burnouts, and a couple of vehicles in front of me did quick burnouts. And then this guy is pretty hard up, kind of giving me crud for the car being an import. And I start doing a burnout. And I start a third gear burnout, sitting dead still. And the car goes, Bruh! And you can hear him in the video, wrong weekend, expletive that you can't say, really loud. And as soon as he gets done saying it, and a third gear burnout is what I call shotgun smoke. So the smoke just shoots straight out of the wheel wells on both sides. And then the car just immediately gets engulfed in the smoke. And as I go by, you can hear and then see people pointing and laughing at that guy. Favorite non-drifting video of my entire life.
Don't do it! I want to see this shit. Come on. I like that. Let's go, Jackson! Don't do it! There you go. God damn.
Love that video.
All right, okay.
Love that car for those reasons.
Favorite non-Cattlesnake car? It's what I'm thinking of. I really do.
Favorite non-Cattlesnake car?
It wasn't around that long, but I loved it so much.
I wish it's not going to be what you want.
I know.
I wish I would have taken the Camaro further.
I know. So, okay, tell your car, and I'll talk about your Camaro because of how much I love that car.
It's the JZX, the black JZX 100 that had been the white JZX 100.
Good car. Good car. Good car.
It had it all. It had everything I wanted a car to have, except a cage so I could really enjoy Englishtown. Mm-hmm. It's one of the few / only car I've ever wrecked. It was white and it was pristine. I wanted a daily driver, air conditioning, nice car. And I built a set of I built a set of Vienna Courages just for like the minimum amount of brake clearance. Like every caliper on the car was shaved so that I could get the most lip on stock body. So with a roll, no pull, it had 4 inches of front lip and 5 inches of back lip with like a 1.5 degrees of camber in the.
Just sitting perfect right there.
When it was white, it was perfect. I ended up backing that car into a wall for a really silly reason at what seemed like walking pace. Damaged the car really badly. Crushed it to the point that there was a little kink in the C-pillar. Ruined my dream of a nice daily like that. But rounded up, what is the rear overs that were? It's not being sports. It's the other one. It was Origin. It was Origin rear.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Origin Lab. Yeah,
Origin rear overs. I actually got a set of Origin front fenders, and they weren't big enough. And I ended up stretching and welding and fiddling with a set of front fenders to get what I wanted. Bought a real BN kit through Toge Factory. And then modified the back bumper to flare out and match the wide body. I can't stand when the bumper goes straight and the wide body's wide. The back edge drives me up a wall. Sorry, guys. Anybody's got that. But maybe do better.
Okay.
When it's about looks, make it flow, make it work. I'm not telling you to mold your car together. That's bad too. But like the ends of a bumper stop where the quarters stop, guys. All right. So built the Courage's again to have 6-inch lips, and the car was ridiculous. And I painted it the color you're supposed to paint it. I think Matt painted that one for me, black.
Yeah.
So black car, chrome wheels, chrome everything, nice stereo, TV inside. Did an HX35, a little bit of an old school turbo, but it sounded sick. Mm-hmm. Power FC, made 400 wheel. And it was never on anything but
Power FC, like what, 2015, 2016?
Yeah, I should have done something else. I bought it brand new from JRP. And some people that know Power FC stuff are going to know this. I bought it in the like exact moments that Apexy was no longer cooperating with America. I think they were angry that we had FC Edit and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They'd already stopped cooperating with like Australia.
Yeah, the New Zealand FC data log it, yeah.
Right, FC data log it, right. And they, after I'd bought this Power FC and I'd bought all this stuff to make it work, and I bought their software, they stopped honoring the software in America.
Really? So like
at
the
that
product
point,
key and the product key and the code,
right?
None of that stuff.
And because it was a newer one, for some reason, it was like locked out. I couldn't use data log it or whatever it was, FC log it or whatever. Couldn't. So the boys at Freed had to like hand controller tune this car. Really ruined
one box at a time.
Yeah, really ruined my wanting to own a power, a car and do Power FC to look Japanese.
Oh my god!
But yeah, that car was great. I loved it. It was an absolute bear to get on and off of a trailer because that long BN, and it was 2 fingers off the ground. The rear BN was almost the same as the front BN. It might have been 6 inches at its highest point. It's tough to drive.
Yeah.
But man, I love taking pictures of that car.
The first time I saw that car was at a Shenandoah Speedway event. I don't know if it was the first time you had it out when it was black, but when I saw that thing and heard it, and I mean, obviously, you throw it around and it's got that wonderful long wheelbase that I love, but it was moving and it was keeping up with everything out there. God almighty, was that thing?
55,
it was a pretty car. It was a pretty car.
I miss it. And I think that event was like Low Style Heroes or something. They brought Abo Moon here. Mm-hmm. And he approved it. He was okay with it.
I would hope so. I mean, I did. Yeah, put the his stickers on the approved cars.
Yeah, he did. He did, and that sticker stayed on it until it left me. God, Rich Whiteman ended up with that car.
That now is with Colby Gates.
No, it's a different car. He ended up with that car for a while, and I do not know what happened to it after him. And then he bought Matt's Baraboo, it's a Canada comp car that looked just like it. Okay. But it was all comp card when he bought it, and he churched it up and made it. Not that it was a bad comp car, but I think it's different rules and different style of building there, And so not the same car. A lot of people, What's the other one? Some people think that LZ's car, his yellow S15, is my blue S15.
No.
It's still alive and came back from New York and lives around here now. The blue car does. But LZ's S15 is my white S15 that I owned for
many moons ago.
No, but more recent. I sold it to Pat Gooden, and I think Pat pretty much just took it down to LZ. I don't think he was even really the buyer, which was fine.
So did you get the white one after the blue one for
much later?
A day?
Yes, I had the white one when I lived at the house I'm at now.
Gotcha.
So that could have been 14, 15, maybe around the JZX one.
Yeah, I mean, you go through cars you won't go through bad decisions, but your collection still is by far probably one of the coolest. But no, I want to talk a little bit about your Camaro. So I was trying to do some research on it, and the worst part is it was around that time of the internet when Facebook was just starting to get better and more, you could be able to show stuff. Forums, there's not anything left that I could find on it. Yeah. So what I remember, and the reason is about the same time as when the Falcon Camaro was hyped.
Right. It was the tail end of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So 68, 69 Chevy Camaro was a LS1 T56 out of a Camaro, I believe, F-body. Still had factory style solid rear.
Right.
Coilovers in the front.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah.
So that 4-link had coilovers in the rear. The front was converted to basically C5 suspension.
Okay. So you did do that.
It's a knuckle they sell that, you have to use these weird arms with it and stuff. It's kind of all a bolt-on. And then I trimmed those knuckles, and I had to run a lot of offset, and it ended up working okay. It really needed the lower arms to be cut for the angle in the back, and we would really been onto something.
So this is, I want to say, between 08 and 10.
Yeah, 10 to 11, I believe.
10 to 11? Okay.
Yeah. And like so many cars, I think I did 2 drift events with it, and a guy out of PA got crazy on it and got excited about it. And I think he offered me 35 grand, which for an LS T50, good handling, yada, 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 really solid 69 Camaro is not now it's nothing. At the time was pretty good. And yeah, I drove it at 2 events, had no issue with it whatsoever, loved it. But I'd never dreamed somebody'd offer me $35,000.
Yeah, even back then, that is disgusting money.
It's dumb. And I used that to buy the S15. I actually got it in this crazy package deal where it was the S15, an S14 with an SR, and this guy's entire stock of stuff that I sold off. It was some rare stuff, some neat stuff, some random stuff. I think I was selling 300ZX brake calipers to people for 5 years. Like, he had a 55-gallon drum full of them.
God, oh my.
You've seen me sell a little bit of everything.
It is really wild, though, to be able to be a part of something like that, to kind of see how, I wouldn't say cheap, but how inexpensive stuff was. And then now the same things that we thought, yeah, no, you want a VLSD or a welded S13 diff. That's like $80, right? It's like $100, right?
And so much stuff was, a little bit of a giveaway. We were in just the right time where you could be college age, part-time working, and go, to some degree, go drifting. I don't know. It's unfair to kids trying to do that right now. I totally acknowledge that. It's hard.
Well, there's a lot of different ways to be a part of drifting other than just having a drift car. I've talked on the podcast about sim driving. Have you done any sim experience?
So I'm an advocate. I think that everyone who can needs to sim drive a ton. Even if you're not great at it, you learn tracks. However, I'm horrible. I can't drift 3 turns. I've made a connection between 2 turns about 3 times. Probably by odds, I should have done it more than that. Not trying. I'm horrible at the sim.
I'm so glad I finally have a new friend. Oh my God. I get on there and the triple monitors and I'm just like, I got this. And I'm like, I don't got, and it's like day 1 drifting all over again.
And everyone tells me, like, you get the good monitors and you get the stuff that you can feel stuff and it's the right wheel and all these things, it'll be better and it'll feel like a real car and you'll do better. And I don't do better and I feel terrible.
But at least you're an advocate, like that helps. But nice thing too, obviously even with sims being cost effective again, we'll call them. There's someone there out there you can get for $1,500 all in, which, that may sound like a lot, but we were talking about buying your first drift car and modifying it and put parts on it.
Exactly.
$1,500 buys you what? An S13 non-roller? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God. So
and I'm not saying that you should stay in that. Well, I don't know. Like, some folks really do enjoy that world. I know a couple guys that have really taken it a long way. As soon as you can, get that $1,500 E36 or something. Gosh, does it seem to help? I've watched a lot of people that were sim drifters just show up at their first drift event and start tying courses together. It doesn't always work, but I've seen it multiple times where someone's never really drifted in their life is tying a smaller course together, same day, first day.
Absolutely. No, and then we go like, man, if we had this back in the early 2000s,
for real.
Life would have been wild. So, okay, so you're talking about new drifters coming on the track. We'll leave kind of sim stuff to the side right now. So modifications to your drift car are almost a necessity to be able to have it be consistent on track. What is one modification that you swear by being the first mod to be able to help your career progression in drift?
If it's the first mod, before you go out and do anything else, I'm going to call it a welded. But you have to have both wheels.
You're called a locker. You want a lock? You want
to
call it a locker
of some sort. And I know that there are guys that can drift open diff cars. There's somebody that used to really do well in a Miata open diff. There were videos of it.
Really?
Yeah. And he was just one of those, like, throw the car in 3 times faster than you think it could ever work. And he's losing momentum the whole time, but like, it looked good. And there's people that will argue. They will go look that video up and argue and tell you, you don't need the welded diff. You need the seat or the this or the that. And I'm like, to end up drifting with your friends, to end up drifting the track the way others drifted, to get to where I would say you want to go, I think the first mod needs to be lock that diff. Because you can drift a car with no angle. You can hook that seatbelt a little tighter and keep yourself in there. You can do it without an e-brake. And most cars have enough power. Let's say they got 180 wheel, 170 wheel. They'll drift. But one leg is going to hinder you learning more than anything else. You're going to get so frustrated driving around understeering and then spinning that inside wheel. No, just don't. Don't do it.
I like it. No, I mean, and realistically, welding an open isn't that hard nowadays. Back when we didn't have access to shop stuff or even the idea of how to do spider gears.
No gas welding.
In that thing up.
We got to get real clean for this. No, nowadays, even if you don't have access to that or you don't happen to know a friend, at least there's enough shops and stuff that will, or take it to a dedicated welding shop in a bucket, cleaned up and ready. Do everything you can to make it easy on those guys so they don't turn you away and tell you you're an idiot and going to ruin their stuff. And let them weld it. And you work out the rest yourself.
Simple enough. So going back to the grassroots idea, this is actually a two-parter now. What's one thing that you like about grassroots drifting right now, and what is one thing that you dislike? I want to hear both sides of the coin.
Okay. Right now, I love that there are so many events to choose from.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. If someone's complaining about there not being enough events, brother, sister, whoever you are, spend 10 minutes on the internet. I know that it doesn't pop up in a Google search, but as soon as you should be knowing where they're at, the internet will give that up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's Facebook or Instagram or whatever, if you've been digging for a day or two, you will have more events than you can get to.
Absolutely.
I love that that's that way. And then the tracks run the gamut. There's plenty of parking lot events and there's plenty of big track events. And if you can't afford, an expensive event, there's MIR or Capital for, sub $100 and local. Okay, they're not huge tracks, but you're also new if you're at that money level. And then the tracks that built the best pro drifters in the world are within 2.5 hours of you. So,
yes.
Englishtown, and if you work it right, Summit Point is a magical place.
Yeah.
So I think grassroots drifting, especially where we're at right now, where we are standing, it's just how many events that you have to choose from. You might even be a little bit overwhelmed.
Especially when you're starting out, there's a lot to choose from. There's no doubt.
A lot to choose from. I guess at a certain point it can become more of a hassle, but don't complain about it, guys. You're really lucky. We used to get 5 events a year. We knew what we were going to because there were only 5 of them, period. And you were hoping to get an invite to one of them.
Yeah, you call off work regardless, just in case, or you plan your school schedule around it, and
So
all right. So we got the good one out though. I need to hear what you don't like.
Man, grassroots drifting. It's going to be the same old. I'm not going to give you something that's going to be, set the world on fire. Guys, okay, compete at the grassroots level and enjoy it. It's great. But if you're competing at the grassroots level, especially if it's your first year or two, enjoy it. Just enjoy it. Compete, then go do events where you don't compete. I'm not trying to ruin your life or ruin your day or ruin your dream. Have your dream, but you don't have to start wanting to go to FD day one. Don't make that your plan right away. There's so many good friends, so much good networking, so much fun. Drifting is the debauchery, party sport now. Go enjoy all of that. That's from a guy that might have at certain times not done that as much as I should. Go enjoy all of that. Quit it. Quit trying to compete so hard right away.
Like my friend Dan Savage does, to quit trying to win practice.
Yeah. Quit trying to live life. And I'm going to give a side whatever to that, too.
All right.
Once you can tandem, guys and gals, every lap's not a come. Maybe you did run up on me and door me or whoever, but maybe, just maybe, we look back and we realize where you were at and we threw a little more aim, or we're driving to match you. Because that's what you're supposed to do when you're not competing. You're tandem with your buddies. And that's why Englishtown has some sick tandems with the blue cars. Barn Built Boy, Bazo, all those guys, they figured that out. And that shouldn't be something we have to figure out. It's real dang simple. You're tandeming with your buddies, organize your buddies in the right order. And, you don't have to be a nerd about it and talk too much about drifting before you go drifting, but figure out how to keep your cars close together. It's not all about the guy behind catching up. It can be about the guy in front getting back there with his buddy. You're not always competing with each other.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, just the total car awareness is something that comes with time, not only for you, but also buddy awareness, watching your friends drive, driving with your friends, knowing, all right, Dylan McCumber. I love Dylan McCumber at Capitol because he will jump in with anyone and know exactly where to put his car.
Makes it work. Miata Mustang 240. He'll be in the same spot with them all. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, probably one of my favorite guys to watch at Capitol when I'm out there is just Dylan's like, all right, hey, 4-car train, I was going to be number 2, and we're just going to make it work.
Yeah.
And
that's every the thing. Time. I like to think I'll jump in with anybody, but the truth of it is, if I look and I don't know anybody, I want to be in a certain spot. He doesn't care.
No.
Good on him.
No, and I think that helps some of these newer drivers to be like, hey, I'm going to push you, and we're going to do this together.
Yeah.
And it builds that sense of trust and acceptance. Okay, you boop each other. Okay, then you just drive off track. You figure out what happened. You don't do it again. I think some of these younger guys overthink this stuff. Like, oh, I don't want to crash. Like, yeah, don't crash into me. But like, if you get a little close and like rub my bumper in, like, I'm not going to break your face.
Yes, very much. And that's another thing is the young folks coming into it now, they need to realize that it's a track and there are going to be mistakes and people are going to bop each other. Get out of the car and be cool with each other. If you've got to drive it to work tomorrow, when you get done being cool with your buddies about it, let them know you got to drive it to work tomorrow. Maybe they'll help you get it back together. Unless there's just gross negligence, be cool about a booping. Be cool about guys learning with you.
Absolutely. Now, we talked a little bit about the car that I wanted to save to have it because it's truly in the last 12 months, that car has gone from roller in a field to on a t-shirt.
Driving. You drove on a trailer.
I drove on a trailer. I won't give you much more than that.
Yeah. She was a rough old dog.
But this progression that this car has gone at now, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, we're talking about the car that is called Cattlesnake, politely named by Mr. Mackey. This thing, again, has gone from just being a very, overall, you would look at it being just a pretty standard LS build. But when you start digging into this car, the amount of thought, fabrication, essentially you took 22 years of drift knowledge.
Yeah.
And this was your swan song, we'll put it.
Maybe, because I don't know that I'm going to build anything past this. I'm getting pretty old. And if this lasts us, a few years, it may be the end of this for me. If it is, and it keeps going the way it's gone, that won't bother me a bit in the world. I've had giddy, giggling, sometimes laughing out loud in the car, fun in this car so many times. So I've enjoyed drifting more in the last year than I have in the last 7 years.
So give me a quick rundown of what the car is, and then some of the milestones you've been able to accomplish with this, which is why it makes it so special.
So I've always loved the look of vintage NASCAR, 60s, 70s NASCAR especially. I always wanted to try and make that work with drifting. The Camaro was kind of a reach for that, but I thought the Camaro chassis was a better attempt, so I kind of went with a Trans Am look. But what I've really always liked was the big, long wheelbase NASCAR. I love B-body Mopars. Over and over again, made light attempts at old car drift cars. The most recent before this was I had a 70 Charger, which is like kind of holy grail car to a lot of people. They're worth a ton of money these days. Person would be crazy to drift one. I built one with stock style front suspension, Gen 3 Hemi, 2012 Gen 3 Hemi, TKX trans, pretty well built diff, dual caliper stuff, all that stuff. Really good suspension stuff under it, but stock style suspension, because I was like, well, you can't cut up a 70 Charger.
Absolutely not.
Which is kind of dumb. I wish I would have now. But oh well.
Wait, you talking about the green one?
Yeah.
No, don't you dare. Don't. That car was gorgeous.
It's not as nice as it looked. But
okay, all right, well, it looked good.
I undersold it too. I sold it for too little. I think I posted it for mid-50s, and people started a bidding war, and it got up to $60,000, and the first guy that got $60,000, I let it go.
All right.
Insane to me. You couldn't tell 2010 me. Now, I don't consider myself owning these cars, because at the same time, I couldn't afford to have more than one of them at a time and stuff. But
yeah,
if you'd have told 2010 me that I'd have a 70 Charger that was worth, what the heck? Anyway, no. I had that car. I drove it a little bit. I tried to do what I'd call some jimmies in it. And even with a good bit of caster, it scared the bejesus out of me. It did not work well yet. I didn't. And I know a few people that autocross, and they'll step those cars out and they'll kind of drift them a bit, and they seem comfortable, but I wasn't. So I scrapped that idea, sold that car. Also, it was just a liability. It was so much money to have in a car, and so much money that it was worth. And I tried one more time, and I decided, okay, I'm going to spend a little less on the chassis, and I'm going to go all. It will be a drift car and nothing else. I didn't even know how much I was going to cut and tear it apart yet, but I was going to cut and tear it apart. The amount it took. I bought the car out of Virginia. Jason Conklin and Reese Conklin took me down there just to have a good time. A gentleman that sold it to me had gotten it from a librarian down the road from him. I mean, the whole thing, the story, the guy was named Shade Tree. He was like 6'6" and skinny as a rail.
Oh my God.
Cool guy. Undersold the car, tried to tell me there was way more rust than there was and stuff. I was ready for just about anything when I got there. And I was like, what? This is way nicer than it should be. So I got a really good start, even though, you look at the car and you think it's rough. And it is. It's splotchy, and it has a little bit of rust around the rear quarters, but the truth of it was the belly of the car was rock solid. Imagine the best case scenario for an S13 this day and age. And that's what the belly of this car was like.
That's insane.
It was great.
Absolutely insane.
Oh, it was great. So, yeah, I knew that this front suspension wasn't going to work, and I was going to have to use something else. I had intended to use 240SX stuff. There's a guy named Alexander Claudin, I believe in France, who has a Charger, a 69 Charger. He's been drifting for a long time. And looking at what he had, I don't know if he does or not, but it looked like he was using 240SX stuff.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm using 240SX stuff. And we were on the way to PRI last year. So PRI just happened this year. So that was a year ago. That's how long ago this car, And I was talking a little bit to Brian Wilkerson about using the 240 stuff. And he goes, yeah, I just don't know why you wouldn't use BMW stuff. I was like, why wouldn't I use 240 stuff? And he's like, I don't know. I just like the front rack. He said, I don't know if that's the exact words, but he said something along the lines of like, I think I just like the front rack. Or maybe he said there's more parts for cheap these days. Or I don't know what he said, but he definitely said the front rack part. And I kind of brushed it off. I didn't be like, well, that's dumb. But I didn't think that was the ideal setup in the moment. And a couple hours on the plane later, and I realized he was right. It is the way. It's the simplest suspension. It's the simplest to set up. The rack is in the front, which is a huge help. It's a little bit hard to mess up as long as you get you get it to work like it did in the car it originally came in.
Can I pause you there for 1 second?
Yeah.
For some of our viewers that don't understand why front rack versus rear rack may be an advantage or a disadvantage, can you do a quick shot on this as far as understanding why?
There's a few things. The geometry of a front rack allows you to get a lot of angle without putting the front suspension into a bind situation where it does what we call going over center. You almost can't go over center because the only limiting factor is going to be when the outer tie rod tries to cross over behind the knuckle. There's no room for it to go. It can't bind up. It's always going to want to pull itself back out of it. Whereas the rear rack in 40SX, that is its only real Achilles heel, is that you can over center it, get the geometry all wonky, and you'll get what we call wobbly wheel at angle. Or the wheel will not return because it's crossed over center. It has no leverage to steer the wheel back. It can be really unsettling your first few times. Then there's people that have gotten so used to it, they can feel the wobble and know when to kick the wheel back. They just drive through it, which is impressive. So front rack can't get that. And there's some other stuff that's a little beyond, it's more like Chelsea pay grade, not so much Chelsea DeNova pay grade, not so much me.
I think that was perfect. I just wanted to make sure that people understand why that was so important for you to continue this and why. So please keep going.
So in a matter of a couple of weeks, talked to the gentleman that was selling the Mopar that became the Cattlesnake. I talked to Brian and worked out a deal to get basically a shell that we had at work, get everything out from under. 98 E36, like a 323 shell. And it was a really nice car. Basically got that thing for free. And I bought a titleless 2001 Camaro that had this little 5.3 crate motor in it and a T56. It was going to do me a lot of good.
Mm-hmm.
So I took all of those items and started parting them down immediately. I brought the Mopar in and stripped the entire drivetrain, the interior, everything out of it, and sold almost all of it to one person, even though it was a 318 and the not desirable trans and an 8 1/4 disc, which
was
is
a 727 automatic.
No, 914. So it was all economy car stuff. Yeah, but it ran and shifted well. The brakes were, and this guy came and gave me, I think, $2,900 because Mopar stuff's worth money for these, to me, absolute throwaway engine, trans, arm, torsion bars, whatever. But he got a package deal where he could take a car that pulled out of a field and make a running driving car out of it.
There you go.
I get it. I gave him a bunch of interior stuff that I probably could have sold for a bunch of money, but
whatever.
Trying to explain and deal with. I love you, Mopar guys, but you were very picky. You're very weird. You know more than I do about the stuff, and I know a lot about Mopar stuff. It's hard to sell the stuff. You get a ton of money for it, but it's hard to sell. When you find a guy that'll give you the money, sell it all to him. Sold off the drivetrain to it. Sold off the body from the Camaro and a bunch of parts from it. A nitrous kit. Didn't sell off the Beamer. It actually just stayed out behind work. It was used for 3D scanning for cage work and.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it was the test car for the MA Motorsports quick change in an E36. So
it lives on. That's what matters. It lives
I think
on.
our first one went in Reese Conklin's car, but it was made off of that car.
Mm-hmm.
Shane was laying out back behind the shop with his 3D scanner and the little dots underneath that chassis. And then I just kind of locked myself in the shop, and I had no idea how long this was going to take. If it took 2 months or it took 2 years, I was going to stay at it the best my finances and time would allow. Fortunately, there wasn't a lot going on other than just normal work. And I stayed at this thing. Man, there wasn't a night I didn't work till 3 o'clock for a while, to the detriment of my health. But I'll say the E36 stuff popped into this car. It went in and worked. It's like it lined up with anything.
Right.
But that suspension setup and rack and all really lends itself to getting swapped into something, especially if it's a wider car.
Okay.
It went well, and a couple of things were like serendipitously worked out where I only had to notch the crossmember the amount you would expect to put an LS with a F-body oil pan into an E36 or whatever. And the engine sits really far back and really low, and it just, I did a lot of math, I did a lot of thinking, I did a lot of measuring, I did a lot of planning, but at the same time, I usually have a really bad luck, and the few things that needed to work out that I couldn't measure or plan kind of did.
Wow.
Yeah. Toward the end of this build, so I got the front suspension into this thing. I got a motor mocked up. I picked out an 8/8 diff, and I didn't have to narrow it because it's from an Explorer, and that's like 3/4 of an inch narrower than what was in it. Really stuff working out. 4-link setup. I used some leftover parts from initially. I had a 4-link from a guy, Riley Motorsports, Bill Riley, in my 70 Charger, and he had sent some wrong lower arm parts and rear brackets when he sent my first kit, and he didn't make me send those back. So I tack welded the diff to the the rear frame rails of the car with some standoffs. I used those lower arms, and I built the rest of it off of that. So again, things just worked out.
That's impressive.
Yeah. It really, and it's great because the upper arms and the things that I didn't have from that kit wouldn't have worked out at the ride height I'm trying to do anyway. It just really worked out until the point where the car was a roller and I'd have pulled the engine back out and I was getting everything ready to go in, and I got pretty sick. This is near the end of month 2 building the car. And Dylan McCumber, another thing was I think our shop tubing bender was on the fritz. And I was getting ready to do the cage, and I'm just dying. I can barely drag myself into the building, and once I get there, I can't pick anything up. I'm just weak. So I talked to Dylan, and the initial agreement was kind of like, I'm going to do most of the work and the bending, and I'm going to get this cage together, and I probably need you to weld it, but we're using your bender. We're using your stuff in your shop, at his home shop. Mm-hmm. And we agreed on a price for doing that. 4 days of work. Very reasonable. He's a very reasonable guy. He's always backed up, but he did. He probably displaced someone else to help me out here. And we went to work with him getting near me while I'm sick, me reassuring him every day. I'm like, I took a COVID test. It's not COVID. And he was a huge help. I ended up probably only bending about half the bars that went in that car. And probably welded less than a quarter of it.
Wow.
And he really, we might have butted heads a couple of times, but generally he let me work through him, and for somebody that does so much on his own the way he does, that was pretty sweet.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. Honestly, if I wasn't dying during it, it would have been a really good time. It felt kind of like old times. Right. So I enjoyed that, and I appreciate that from him. So I got the car caged, and caged. Painted the interior.
What?
Painted the interior. Painted the whole damn interior. Sanding the interior.
Who are you?
Trying to get the interior, the parts back in the interior of the car while the paint's sticky because I can't wait 3 days. Wired the whole thing. Lots of used FD parts in that car. There's an entire radium, fuel tank. Well, actually, I bought the fuel cell new because I wanted something bigger than is what is in most cars.
Right.
Simply for the look. I wanted that thing hanging down a certain height. I wanted you to see it from a certain distance. Everything about the way the car looks, whether you like it or not, it's not accidental.
NASCAR style.
The car looks, it looks the way I want a car to look. It really does. So where that hangs down, where the fuel filler is, the way the fuel filler's done. There were many options that cost less and were more up to date and might work a little better. It had to look the way it looked. I was on the edge of painting, like sanding the radium stuff off and painting the cell red with ATL on it. Like,
oh my God.
I would have stenciled ATL onto it again for a look. And then I felt a little guilt, so I didn't do it. But even the dash that's in the car, it's like out of an old Arca car. Mm-hmm. It's way more money for me to have this used dash that looks kind of dated than it would have been to have a really nice, like, Power Tune or whatever it was dash or, Link stuff. I wanted it to look the way it looks. The steering column's in the car. Mm-hmm. It's there because it looks the way I want it to. So, yeah, interior end, seating stuff handled. Like all of that had to get done before any of that painting. It was back and forth. It's full fuel system, all the wiring. The car has heat. Yeah.
It's got a heater core in it?
Got a heater core. All the heat works, defrost work. Had to rewire all of that. There's no Mopar wiring really left in the car. The floor vents work.
That's kind of nice in some of these
I had
later
nice
events.
left over from I just restored a 69 Roadrunner. It actually helped me decide to build this car. I restored and sold on a beautiful orange 69 Roadrunner and an A12 cloned. So that A12 means it had that hood that I have on mine. It had steel wheels. So it decided the look of this car too, because I'd see that thing sitting there. I'm like,
yeah,
I'm starting to Chargers are still the king, but now I'm getting into my old man phase, and I got a lot of love for the '69 Roadrunner that like my father would have liked, but now I'm like, I see where you're at.
Like father, like son.
Eventually, so yeah, got this whole thing together in about 2 months.
That's incredible. From in a field to on the mountain.
5.3, little cammed crate motor 5.3 and a stock trans that, I say stock trans, I think Chris refreshed the first one for me. Yeah, he did. Chris Naz, I can't say his last name.
Yeah, Chris Naz. I know Chris. I love Chris. Yeah.
Yeah. Worked with him here at MA. And the first event was going to be Grid Life South in Kershaw, South Carolina, which is actually 25 minutes from my home in South Carolina. So it would have been the first time in a long time that my family members back home could see me drift.
That's so cool.
But the only driving the car done was on and off a trailer, onto a dyno, and then Brian Hopp actually followed me in his truck because the car didn't have legal tags, and I drove it up the road near MA, found some turns, and tried to drift.
And then?
It did. Car drove well, handled well, tracked well, but I think I was being a little timid because I was on the street. I don't street drift anymore. And just kind of step out and step right back in. Tons of traction. Well, it drives okay. Let's take it 550 miles somewhere and go embarrass ourselves. And I know this has probably been heard several times, but on the way there, I really worried like this was not the move because I'm used to towing a foofy looking drift car, a drift car that it's shiny, cool wheels on an open trailer. People pull up beside you, they give you thumbs ups, they nod their heads, they're jazzed. People that don't even know what drifting are sometimes, pumped, and that's a big part of getting psyched on the way to a drift event. Is having people like your dang drift car. I drove this thing 550 miles, and not even so much as some old guy in a Dodge Ram. No one looked over. No one gave a thumbs up. No one beeped their horn. No one cared. So I'm driving 550 miles on the tail end of being sick, not feeling great, haven't tested the car at all. It was not looking good.
Zero psych at this moment.
The psych was all gone. And the cam didn't even sound cool. You got an LS car, got to sit down and cam. Cam was all dinky. Big exhaust, small cam, not a good combo. Very boaty.
And so what happened at the event?
I show up that night, and they tried to redirect me. They're like, the car show area's over here. I'm like, no, it's drifting. They're like, you sure about that? It's like, I promise I've done this before. They're like, yeah, we bet you have. Same thing at Tech. They tried to redirect me to the open track thing. I was like, no, drifting. Nick Swans had a lot of faith in me, and then let me drift at places maybe I didn't have. I'll be careful with that. He's let me drift at some places.
Agreed.
He saw this thing in a video a couple days before the event. I hadn't told him. He just assumed I had the JZX90, which is well sold. He saw this thing in the background of a video, I think with Hop, and was like, what the hell is that? And I didn't speak to him. I didn't message him or talk to him anymore between then and the event, thinking I'm going to get kicked out of the event. I show up, and he made a little remark, but it wasn't anything bad. He was like, I'm always going to let you drift. But you can tell he had no faith in the car. So I go out first run group, thinking I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to drift one corner at a time and make sure I can center this thing up and it doesn't get out from under me or do anything weird. Make sure the caster works. Yada, yada, yada. Well, the first turn that
Mhm.
you can drift on that track is third. Third in a car with a 390-ish gear ratio and a T56. So you figure out what the heck that is. I don't know. It's 75, 80 mile an hour.
Yeah.
And you come out of hot pit, rowing through the gears to enter that turn, left turn. It's a left turn to a right, left, right, several, just really basic turn. And I did that first turn. Wasn't too scary. And I looked at where I was at between the race curves, and I'm like, we're doing the next one. And 4 or 5 turns later, I realized, oh, you gotta tone this down. You're gonna run out of tire.
Mm-hmm.
And I settled down for some straightaway stuff, and I fiddled with the e-brake and felt myself warm it up, And after this long straightaway, I said, screw it. We're gonna e-brake a little. We're gonna drive to the inside. We're gonna e-brake the other way, and we're just gonna let it. We're gonna see how much angle I got to work with, and the thing.
Let her eat.
The thing just worked.
That's it. His skull comes out.
I had one little tiny wiring problem. It's just something that wasn't tied up very well that I had to deal with after that run group. But when I came off track after that run group, it went from no one caring at all to felt pretty good. Folks were jazzed. And the weekend went that way. The car gave no more trouble all weekend. I was checking oil and checking pressures, checking everything nonstop, and it refused to give me an issue.
I had to say at least 30 to 50% of the footage from Grid Life South. Whenever I'd go through, like a week after the event, you at some corner, or you coming in the pits, or just it flooded the internet.
Yeah. I never thought about that part of it until it never. I wanted people to like it. I wanted the people that I was drifting with to like it enough to drift with it, or drift well enough to be drifted with.
Of course.
Caged it for a reason. Okay, I caged it so it wouldn't fall apart. It's a B-body, but so I could open the door. But I caged it and planned on tandeming, but I didn't know if it was going to work for that. I didn't know if people would like the car, or people would not want to tandem with it because it was big or weird. All that was gone after that first run group. And I just drifted all weekend and had a great time. The Conklins kind of took care of me. I was bunking with them in their RV, and because I hadn't taken care of myself during the time when I was building the car, I went to bed at 9 o'clock on the first night, and I didn't wake up till 11 o'clock the next day.
Shoo!
Everybody partied.
Yep.
I don't know anything about the partying that happened, and it felt great.
Gosh.
And it set me up for the next day to have another great day of the car, giving no trouble. I ran out of tire halfway through the last day, and I brought a lot of tire.
I mean, being able to do events like Grid Life South, the car has been a staple, if not the car for Drift Appalachia. When people talk about that, some of the stuff I think between you, Ben Hobson, and Jacob Duncan, some of the stuff that you guys were throwing down on those different courses were, I'd say, the top 3 when it comes to media.
What is the kid? Cash. Oh, forget his name. The kid with the Fox body's really good at those events.
Oh,
God, that kid,
he was only at all
so
5.
He went to one, but his car he went to 3, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been to West Virginia, the first Kentucky one. He was at the last Kentucky one, but he had a fresh motor in that was giving some trouble, so he really didn't get any laps.
Okay.
And then he and his dad were still in a great mood, and just they're great.
No, he was doing the boogie for sure.
God, he's
for
good.
sure. I mean, obviously, you see progressions in not just the car, and you've built this car that you're really happy with. When it comes to these events and stuff like that, I want to come back a little bit to the grassroots stuff. And we talked about making friends a little bit. What do you think is like just a bad move, a faux pas, like just a dumb thing that some new drivers could do at these drift events that they may not even think that's just a bad move, just a bad idea, and maybe to get them off on the wrong foot with some drifters?
I see a lot of stuff.
Okay, let's.
And it's not. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to pick one that's bad, because everything I see, not everything, but most everything I see, you go, well, they did it once. Somebody's going to tell them, and they're going to quit, and it's going to be okay. trying to think of the thing that's like you keep seeing it and it's a problem. What could that be?
It may not be a way they act, but it may be a way they drive, or how their car's set up and looks, how their pit may be, and how they interact with other drivers, something along those lines.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, while you're thinking, we're not trying to talk smack about you guys, but what we want to do is strictly to give you awareness of, like, you may not even know you're doing this, but other people are noticing.
Not keep being that guy. Well, this went away for a while, and it's back.
Okay.
Everybody, the lines are long. They're always going to be long. And I know you're out there, and you've had to wait 30 minutes between a run, and you're all amped up. Which, by the way, that's a big thing. Is don't do whatever you can. It's worth it for you to sit down. So this is a rant before the rant. For you to sit down and get your head right while you're in that line, because you know you're going to wait 20, 30 minutes. You're going to get worked up. And if you blow the run in the first 2 turns, you're back to waiting. And it's going to make you anxious, and you're going to repeat it. You're going to develop bad habits. You're going to target fixate and hit something. All the things can go wrong because you've been in the headspace or the wrong headspace before you go out on that track, just because you've been waiting, chilling, and getting in your own head. I don't know how to tell you to figure that out, but figure that out. Get to a place where you don't get that way. Get the jitters out. Shake your hands. Beat on your helmet. Do whatever you got to do. Think about something else. Listen to your favorite song. I don't care. Figure the thing out so you don't go out and blow these runs over and over again and take longer to learn, because you're paying for this time and other people are
Great
paying for
advice.
that time.
Absolutely.
Now, that goes back to people figured out the 1-spin rule, because it used to be 2-spin. The smaller tracks, it's definitely a 1-spin rule for a long time. And I think that we need to remind the kids today that that's the case. I see a lot of folks go out on track and spin over and over and over again. We'll spin 4 times on a small track. Hell, I can't see you on the big track, but I want to know how many times you spun out there. And I waited for you for 4 minutes while you sorted that out. It's not helping you. It's certainly not helping us, but it's really not helping you. You are on that track to figure out a line and figure out the track. And if you spun out 2 times, your head ain't right. Your run ain't right. Your line ain't right. Go ahead and get back in that line.
Just cruise off. Get to speed.
Cruise off. It's lost right now. Like I've been seeing it a ton, and it sounds like such a basic thing, but it's kind of like irking me lately. It hasn't gotten to the point that I've gotten out of my car and went and like talked to anybody, and that's on me, because we should politely, kindly, us older folks need to do that. We probably should. It's on us too. We're not getting out and telling these kids that. Do it. I'm trying to be better about it.
As one of my guests mentioned that drifters are introverts, media guys are introverts. So just the fact that just going up to another random, I will say me excluded, because I'll just go up to a random anybody. I think you've seen me do.
You're pretty good about that. You may be naturally introverted, but you work your way out of it, and you seem extroverted.
Regardless, I think that it needs to be okay that, like, don't feel bad if you go up to somebody who is linking the track over and over and over. If you ask, hey, can you ride with me? 10 times out of 10, that is like, cool, no problem. Put the lid on and just roll with you. And
especially us that have been at it a really long time. I used to get to the track every time and like, how many runs am I going to get in today? How can I maximize the number of runs? I got to get the tires set up so I can change them quickly. I've got to get out of this driver's meeting as soon as possible and get to my car and be the third guy on the grid and all that. Man, I really don't feel like I'm missing very many runs to just meander over to my car, get in it, get in line, not worry about it. Yeah, this line's taking forever. I'm going to jump over there. Nah, I'll just wait this line out. And it doesn't seem to affect. So what I'm getting at with that is I don't mind missing some runs to go ride with somebody, or maybe drive your car and tell you what's up with it, or whatever. And my advice isn't going to be the best advice in the world. Don't exclusively listen to me, but listen to me and you and three other guys and work out what you think the best for your program, your driving style, your whatever.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's a community. It's not just a motorsport. It's a community. And I still believe, and I will say this every time I'm on here, drifting is probably the most communal and accepted form of motorsport in the United States, where everyone wants everyone to succeed.
I don't know if it's because we're an outcast when compared to other motorsports or whatever, so we're inviting in that way, or what, but we really are.
So, okay, I don't want to go off the rails. I've got about 83 hours more with the stories that we could probably share with each other that we're not even scratching the surface. There is one thing I wanted to scuffle on, because I like that you're looking ahead, even though you talk about this may be the last car I've built. Like, you've got your fingers in a lot of different pies that a lot of people don't need to know about. But I mean, you were a wrench on an FD team for a year. You work obviously at MA. Brian Wilkerson ran FD. When you see the sport of drifting progressing, what is one thing next 3 to 5 years that you really hope becomes like a mainstay? Or if it's not already happening, what do you hope works into our motorsport that you want to see stay?
Well, I'm already really happy about there being so many events and so many quality events for grassroots folk. For the higher end stuff and to bring more attention to drifting, because we can think it's big all we want. It's the nichest niche that's ever been niched. It's tiny. I think, and some people are going to really disagree with this, I think that stuff like drift games and stuff, we need more of that type of event. We need that to get its butt over here. I love FD. I'm not hating on FD. Everybody's got opinions about what's wrong with FD. I do too. Everybody's got opinions about what's good about FD. I do too. I'm not saying anything needs to replace FD, but as an entertainment and as something to get more people interested in it, I think stuff like drift games needs to come here. Someone either needs to start a series that's huge like that. I know that sucks. Somebody's going to invest a ton of money to draw the people and to get the tracks and to make room for people to come to it and to promote it until everyone knows about it. Or, something from across the pond needs to come here.
Right.
I mean, LZ World Tour stuff. Look how many people show up for that stuff. Love that. Like, whatever you might think about a person or someone that makes their money this way or that way, that was awesome. I wasn't there.
You can't argue with that business model. You can't argue with it.
Yeah. And it has so many people that, okay, you're mad. Like, I know friends that are online that are mad because the people that are interested in drifting in that way don't know this, that, or another. Okay, we're old. We're sticks in the mud. We remember the beginning of something. But there's going to be a lot more after us that maybe we're the beginning of it to them, or maybe someone after us is. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to start the same way it started for us. It can't. We can't go back to that place and go street drifting. The people, the new generation can.
Well, I hate to say it, but street drifting now, you look at the takeover scene, and we're already trying so hard to differentiate and space ourselves away from that.
Yeah.
That if we did go back to street drifting, it's like taking back 20 years worth of progression.
Yeah, it really is. It absolutely is. And there's another.
Yep.
I wasn't gonna.
No. You and me have, I think, we have like a piece of our body in this, because we both go to a local track or localist track that is working with that. And I have my own opinion on that, but it's a double-edged sword. Now, I will say, I want to put myself on blast. I defended this track offering this takeover style strictly because it didn't happen at an intersection. It didn't happen at a shopping center.
I totally get that. And I don't disagree with that part at all. But I think the takeover problem runs deeper than just it being, I said problem. Well, I'm straight calling it a problem. Well, it's a problem. It's a major legal problem. It's a safety problem. It's all those things.
It's a problem.
I think that making a place that's legal for you to continue doing the pit style activity, I don't think it helps stop the illegal activity.
Fair point.
And I don't have anything to back that up. It's a thought.
Yeah.
I think it gets more people interested in it, and they go, well, I can do that tonight legally for $40, but also tomorrow night and the other night I can be out here in a place that gets the people I'm interested in even more excited. More people interested in the takeover style, I think, is going to have more people on the street doing takeover styles.
That's a fair point. No, I think I agree with that too. It's just I don't think there's a right way to like okay it and then condemn it on the other side.
Yeah.
My only other hope is if they do have it at this track that has a drift component to it.
There you go.
It's like, hey, I know you guys want to do this pit style stuff. Why don't you just come back next weekend instead of going to the street? Come try drifting.
You're absolutely right. I was about to head to that. Is like there is always going to be a percentage of those folks that they're interested in this too, or they were already interested in drifting, but they didn't think it was accessible. They didn't think it was affordable. They didn't think it was whatever. I can just go swing or whatever it's called right now in the car I have, and getting them to where drifting is happening at the same location or where some of the folks may cross over between the two. You're going to get some folks that quit doing that and go drifting. You might also get some messes where, it's not likely, but I actually worry about folks that are just doing donuts and figure eights and understeering around in a circle, sometimes one legging or whatever, if they go out and get a little bit of skill, but they haven't decided they fully want to commit to doing something more legitimate. Now you've got folks entering some intersection at 60 miles an hour sideways and backwards and just plowing through an extra 30 people.
Yeah.
Unlikely, but totally possible. I worry. I'm a big worrier, so I worry about that. But yes, having it at somewhere like that local track, it's got to help move some people over. Whether it's helping more than hurting or hurting more than helping, I don't know. But it is definitely going to result in some people coming into drifting that might have not any.
And that's the whole thing about it is just awareness, exposure. That track made that whole thing happen just because drifters said, if you build it, we will come.
Yeah.
And hopefully other places are a little more accepting. I mean, granted, we're already spoiled for choice, but I mean, again.
And not blatantly downing how things are run, but if that gets run well, maybe they figure it out in time a little better or something. I was in the track just closed. It's Irwindale. I was at Irwindale one year for FD crewing, and they had the drag strip, they had FD going on, and they had a legal pit.
In Southern California.
They had a legal pit, a lot of Silverados and some other stuff like that there. And I watched how that worked, and I don't remember specifics of how they were organizing it, but it was well organized. It felt pretty safe. It was such a both ethnic and amount of
like coming together.
Wild. I mean, there was some redneck, long-haired mullet. What do you call it? Mullet, but bald guy in a Ford truck doing donuts.
Like a Joe Dirt.
Yeah, and there's some ICP looking kids, and there's just every type of person doing that, and that felt pretty cool. That was okay. It felt all right. But whether it ended up that way because rules, or if it just sometimes how things get started will affect how people handle it. Right. When people rolled out of the quote unquote pit, I mean, usually on slapping tires, but they drove very slowly back to these parking spaces to set up. It was very calm. There was rowdiness going on, in the stands and right around the pit, but it felt good. And, if we can get ours to that point, maybe that thing can be healthy, man. I don't know.
Well, again, you're making a lot of fair points for a drifter for, how and being able to allow the takeover stuff. But I
think it's all in how it gets handled, and maybe they'll figure that out in time.
It would be nice because, again, more conversions over to our motorsport, or just conversions off the street.
Yeah.
Everything about that, in my opinion, just stop street drifting. There's more than enough events. Yeah. I see a lot of the posts. I don't know if you see me on social media. Anytime in our little cliques of Facebook groups that I know we're a part of, I think probably 7,000 together. So, hey, I'm from this place in Maryland. Where can we go to street skid? And I'm like, boom, here's a link for an event in 4 days at the track 15 minutes from you.
Yeah.
Boom, here's a link for something an hour and a half from you next weekend.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just want to practice. Yeah, go practice here.
You can. It's not man, I feel bad doing this because it's hypocritical to a degree. But I'm gonna give my reasons why I'm this hypocrite. Again, we had 5 events a year.
Mm-hmm.
We had less police presence. We were being as safe as we could be. We weren't being safe enough. No. But really, we just didn't have anywhere else. And today, you have somewhere else, and it's cheap enough that street drifting doesn't make sense. Even if you're trying to justify it, as we did so many times, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. I think
this isn't worth it for anyone involved.
Because the amount of knowledge that, no, it's just, yeah. But I want to be able to, pause this here because I think we need to do a part 2 for your professional stuff. I want to have you back on to talk more about the just more the mechanics of drifting. Again, like I said, you were a mechanic on an FD team. You are a mechanic at a very, very,
might be a mechanic on an FD team this year too.
And that's also something that I can't talk about that I may know something about too, because but no, honestly, Kiely, this has been so much fun, and this has been essentially like we've been at an event just chatting for
hanging
a couple
out,
hours.
talking.
And I seriously, I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to give you a chance to shout out any of your sponsors, anybody you want to be able to give recognition to, and also social media stuff.
Yeah, I always have to thank Mid-Atlantic Motorsports. They gave me the space to build the car. I got a lot of stuff either for, some stuff for free. Brian's really understanding about it. And I do get a little bit of help. Holly helps me out. I get all my tires from, Race Treads? Change the name on them. But mostly right now, after gaining a little bit of a social media following and everything and hoping that I have something to offer people, your boy looking for a sponsor or two. Look for a little help. I about went broke this year, so.
Oh, you too.
The car's getting painted. That's the big thing. What? It's not gonna be old rusty musty anymore. The car's getting painted. It's gonna be sort of like an old '60s NASCAR. I'm looking for fill a little real estate there. Hopefully there's enough visibility that makes it worthwhile to someone, and then we'll figure it out.
Well, you did mention social media. How can not just sponsors, but people want to find you on social media?
So I am by my name, both the places you can really find me. I am Kiely Mackey, Kiely Mackey, on Instagram and Facebook. So I don't have any YouTube or any of that stuff yet. We might go down that path eventually.
The boomer is growing. The boomer is learning.
Slow, real slow.
Well,
but yeah,
again,
that's how to get a hold of me.
Dude, thank you so much for being here. I want to give a shout out to my sponsors for the Dirt Drop podcast, Zeknova US Tires. Shout out Luis Lands out of Florida. You can be able to purchase Zeknova US Tires through ZeknovaUS.com or talk to me over at Toolworks. I could be able to hook up anybody in the Mid-Atlantic for some really nice bulk deals. I also want to give a shout out to Stage Wheels, Bill out of Richmond, Virginia.
Bill's
you can be able to. I love Bill's. He's already in the queue for the podcast. Like I'm so excited to bring him on to talk about all the stuff he's been doing. And
make me a flat-faced wheel, Bill.
Okay, you go back in line. We're gonna delete this whole podcast. This is just ridiculous. No, concave spoke all the way. But yeah, you can find his wheels at stagewheelsna.com and be able to purchase them. They ship all over the country. Fantastic support in multiple bolt patterns, sizes, widths, you name it. Bill's got it. And yeah, that's all we're gonna do. I'm so excited to be able to make this happen. Everybody, we will see you next time on The Dirt Drop. Have a great day. Boom!